Um, so I, like Rebecca Nathenson, San Francisco Bay Area. I'm a product exec, and I think Notebook LM is really freaking cool. I'm going to talk a little bit about it and how I used it. I actually used it on the way to and from the Sidebar Summit. I had to create me a podcast, so.
Well, I'll go next. I finished typing, so I'm in the Bay Area. My expertise, I just put down, I'm a super connector. And then I've been using Fixer.ai to write my emails. And I kind of like it. I'm just trying to figure out if I want to pay $50 a month for it, but I kind of like it. So
That's a lot of money.
it is a lot of money, I know.
Yeah. Randir, do you want to introduce yourself, and then we can
Sure.
red
Yeah,
hot
I'm
kick us off?
Randir Vieira, live in the San Francisco Bay Area, near San Jose. And area of expertise is, I'd say, product, but really the cross-functional nature of product, having led different other functions, including sales and engineering. And my current favorite AI tool, and this changes frequently. So currently it is Lovable. Lots of fun there, even though I'm going to be demoing Replit. There's different reasons for different tools, but current favorite overall is Lovable.
Nice.
Lovely.
All right. Well, so we can go ahead and talk about our agenda. It's a very simple one. I just banged this into the slide deck like, an hour ago. But Ha's going to kick us off. And then I'm going to talk about ChatGPT as a job search partner. And then Randir is actually going to talk about a tool he's built. And then we'll do Q&A either within or across. People are feel free to jump in as well.
Thank you. And then I'm just going to take 20 seconds, but basically, Randir and Rebecca are some of my favorite people. I've known them for years. I started something called the Product Leader Summit way before Sidebar even started, which is my community of VPs of product where I gather everybody annually for 2 days of networking and learning. I got to know Randir and Rebecca through Product Leader Summit. And then, of course, when I learned about Sidebar, I was like, okay, that's it. This is what's missing, which is in between conferences, there's still a way for us to build true, deep, meaningful connections with our peer groups and learn from each other through more structure. And so I convinced Randir and Rebecca to come join. And it's been awesome to just be closer to them as a result of Sidebar. They're both very, very seasoned product leaders, CPOs. Randir just left Amada Health, and Rebecca was at Google for many years and just left PandaDoc as VP of product. And they have been on their own exploratory journeys, and they're here to share what they've learned in their sort of last 6 months or so, kind of figuring out what's next. So, Rebecca, off to you.
All right, so I have no slides for this. I have ChatGPT. So let's go ahead and share ChatGPT. Where is it hiding? Okay, so this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm not going to talk about the process of finding opportunities because there are a lot of guides out there for that. But even once you get into a company's interviewing cycles, it's kind of brutal out there right now. Processes are insanely complex, lots of interviews with a whole bunch of people. You get the take-home assignments. And the key is figuring out not just how to distinguish yourself individually, but how to distinguish yourself from the other 20 people who are in the same stage as you. And so, everyone else they're talking to is probably equally accomplished. Like, it's just a sad fact. There's a lot of amazing people out there right now. Great companies on the resume, great, colleges that they went to, amazing experience. And so then the question is, how do you stand out? And what I've been seeing is that the more you understand who you're talking to, the company, the job, the people, and the more you come in as a thought partner rather than as, almost a supplicant, which I think a lot of people fall into that trap when they're job hunting. They go from applicant to supplicant as opposed to thought partner. That's when people start really thinking about you differently. And this is where I found ChatGPT, or whatever your favorite GPT is really helpful. So it's amazing at synthesizing massive swaths of information, really unstructured info, written, video, audio, and giving you the essence much faster than you could get it otherwise. You always need to sanity check. Hallucinations are still totally a thing, but it's been an absolute godsend for me, especially when I'm trying to run multiple processes at the same time. So first off, I hope this is actually going to show up. If not, I will talk people through it. Yeah, I don't think it's showing up. But one thing I want everyone to be aware of, when you use ChatGPT, go into settings, go to customize GPT, and tell it, don't sugarcoat responses. The problems with sycophancy are supposedly less now, but it's still a thing. Don't provide any links that you haven't verified are both real and contain the material you say they contain. And then any other stuff that you want to provide in terms of custom instructions. I think it's really important to do that so that you get a very factually oriented experience from ChatGPT. So what we're going to do today, I have a job description from a company called Clue. They're based in Canada. I know very little about the company. It's not totally my jam as a job. So I figured it would be a great one to use. So first thing I'm going to do is actually switch sharing and just briefly show all of you the job description. So this is the job description. It's, there's a lot of personality in the job description, builder at heart, 0 to 1. This is who we want. They've got a lot of links at the bottom, which is interesting. That's a lot of stuff to follow. That could take up a lot of time, right? So if this is, let's say I actually have been contacted by somebody at this company, or I applied and they replied to me, what do I do next? And this is where I think ChatGPT just becomes incredibly helpful. So what we're going to do is start off with my initial prompt. And what I'm going to be doing is I'll just be running through a whole bunch of prompts here. I will share this whole conversation at the end, so I can actually just share the entire thing. And then I have a cheat sheet also for people to take a look at in terms of the process that I follow and some of the questions. So this is the first one. One of the things you're going to see here, I talk about give me top 3 or give me top 5 a lot, because I don't want it to just give me an answer and then proceed blithely. I want it to give me options, because what I'm looking for is triggering thought for me, not just giving me answers. And so hopefully it can resolve this URL. It's been having trouble resolving this URL for some reason recently. But there we go. So top 3 things: strategic leadership, cross-functional collaboration, and then data-driven decision-making. Frankly, this is a bit of a general, like a generic job description, and is not necessarily the world's most useful. But hey, we get something here. Now, if you need to learn a little bit more about this, Clue is in an industry I'm not necessarily so familiar with. I mentioned Notebook LM. I was interviewing at a company that does like audit, and it's not an area I'm deeply experienced in. And I had that interview the day after the Sidebar Summit, and I was running short on time. So I uploaded the job description, the website, articles, press releases, LinkedIn profiles of the people I was interviewing with into Notebook LM, and said, build me a podcast. And I listened to it on the way to and from the Sidebar Summit. And that's actually a great way to get a synthesis in consume it in another way. So just, one other thought there. Now, once we get to, okay, I know a little bit about the job description. It's giving me a bit of a summary. What about all those links? So follow all the links in the job description, because I don't just want to work at a company. I want to work at a company that matches my values. So what does the company think about itself? And, give me, what is the company's self-image? What do they value? Where does maybe their self-image and reality not match? And this is where I think we really start getting into some of the gold. So this is how they describe themselves. But then it starts pulling in Glassdoor reviews around how people say they experience things. And it ends up being, maybe a little bit different. Okay, there's some internal feedback that says that transparency and humility, maybe they're not succeeding quite so well. And so now this doesn't just give me info. This gives me questions that I can ask as I'm interviewing with this company. And so I found this to be really helpful a lot of times. Any other things that anyone else has encountered in terms of great prompts that they see as they're just trying to learn more about the company? And Aaron, no, I don't think businesses are spending good time writing good job descriptions, honestly. That's why I just copy and paste it in. Yeah, so I think they tend to be pretty generic in most cases. All right, I can just keep on barreling along here because we
Rebecca,
also
I
have
kind
time.
of missed it. So like you're on ChatGPT now, but like when do you use Notebook LLM? Like when do you
So
decide to go here versus Notebook?
yeah, so I use Notebook LM when one of the things that I found it most useful for is if I'm interviewing at a company where I don't understand the industry.
Okay.
So that's where like I need to understand SOX audit. Like
Uh-huh.
this is a very specific and very complex industry. Give me the overview, and the more info you give Notebook LM, the more detailed and the longer the podcast, and so you get more info, and you can tell it. You can give it a similar prompt to ChatGPT of, I am interviewing for this job. I am new to this industry. Help me understand the industry, and then it asks you to just upload a bunch of links and a bunch of documents to do that.
Very cool. I think I saw Kim had a question in chat. I don't know if you want to go off mute, Kim.
Oh, yeah. So,
Yeah. So there's also other information like in LinkedIn, like organization, how fast they're growing, number of employees in the area, if there's been a lot of turnover, because you often get a lot of these companies, oh, we're hiring and we're changing our culture, when actually it's very toxic. And
Right.
you have to get a sense of what they're actually doing.
Mhm.
So I often will look at that information. I was just curious if we can bring that in there too, or use that as a prompt. I haven't tried it yet.
Yeah. So LinkedIn makes it really hard to scrape their website, but let's give it a try. I love how ChatGPT is totally non-deterministic, so you never know what you're actually going to get. So yeah, I mean, it gives you a good summary. It doesn't tell you who's leaving, which I think is in some ways some of the most interesting info. But it gives you some stuff. So it gives you the basics. And I think otherwise you probably need to go directly onto LinkedIn, just because LinkedIn makes it so hard to pull a lot of this information. It's something I've been finding a lot frequently. All right. So let's jump into one of the places where I think it's that we get really useful info. So I really loved the Sidebar Summit, Evan LaPointe's talk about being, basically influencing and getting people to agree to what you are trying to do. One of the big things he talked about is people fall into the craftsperson, operator, or visionary category. And the reason this is important is it helps you understand how people experience business pain and what they value in terms of an answer. So if you can understand who you're going to be talking to and what type of person they are, then maybe you can frame how you talk with them in a way that connects better. And I have seen this, it's actually really reliable. I'm surprised at how well it captures this sort of thing. And so every time I've done this like 4 times with Jason Smith. It always said visionary and operator. And so I think the critical thing here is, okay, there's not a lot of craftsperson in there. So you're going to want to focus on great execution, on supporting his vision, on figuring out how you are going to do the things that he wants to do, but that maybe is not quite as easy for him to do as CEO. And that's why he's hiring a VP of product. And so let's see, I'm just taking a look at time. I've got a lot more stuff here. I don't want to go through all of it because otherwise Rondir is not going to have any time available to do his stuff, and he's got a really cool tool. But there's one other thing that I want to show you that I've found really interesting. I will take all my interview notes and I will just paste them in. And what I say is, and these are fake interview notes I actually asked ChatGPT to create, But based on these interview notes, again, offer me themes to focus on in the thank you note. Again, not write the thank you note for you. You're using it to spark ideas and thought, not to replace thought. It's really obvious when you've used ChatGPT to write content, not just because of the insane number of M dashes, but also ChatGPT was trained on business writing out in the wild, and that writing tends to be fairly bland and generic a lot of times, and it doesn't have a unique voice. And again, if you are trying to distinguish yourself from the 20 other people who are interviewing, you need that unique voice. So like when I asked for help revising a thank you note, I used the word gobsmacked in it for something that was, it was an appropriate term. It removed it when I did that. And I was like, why'd you remove that? And it's like, actually, never mind. It's actually good to put it in there. And it said it was good for that setting and true to my voice. So I kept it in. So I pasted in all of these notes, and it recommended, here are some themes to focus on. I could pick one, or I could use something else entirely. But, you know, we've got clarity, strategic synthesis, readiness to partner, not just execute. So he's trying to take a load off of himself. And again, these are made up notes. I have no idea if actual Jason Smith would say this. But he knows he needs to step back. He hasn't yet. And I can pick some of these. I can ask it to help me, you know, write some of these, this thank you note. But again, don't have it write it for you. Use it as a thought partner. Now, finally, you can get lots of help on take-home assignments and that sort of thing. I'm going to skip over that. Happy to talk about it more later. But the other key element is this brutal job search market, especially today, can do a major number on your emotions. And I've been impressed at how well ChatGPT can help me gain perspective. It's not a therapist. Please don't use it as a therapist. It will come up with very poor conclusions when you actually try to use it for therapy. But when it comes to reality checks and that kind of thing. So let's say I did the take home and I talked with a bunch of members of the exec team. They all seem to love me. It's been a week they've been radio silent. How many people have experienced this? I actually went through 4 weeks of radio silence for one company. So why? Okay, maybe they're aligning internally. Okay, maybe that's something that I didn't actually do anything. They're still stuck on the CEO deep in product tension. Oh yeah, founder CEOs, they have a lot of trouble letting go. Maybe they're, you know, not quite sure of your fit, and maybe that's something you can do about it. Or, you know, usual stuff, you know, comp headcount, or maybe you aren't pushing hard enough. So here are options. And one, it gives you some, you know, actions you can maybe take, but it also takes that emotion out of you and puts it into a set of ideas and options. And I find it lowers my own personal emotional temperature. So, you know, Sidebar is great for this, but they're not around 24/7. Your Sidebar group isn't around 24/7. And not everyone has somebody else in their lives who knows exactly, you know, their industry. My husband's former military. I can talk to him about it. He's very supportive. He can't give me specifics. So as an example, when I was feeling extra down, I actually uploaded my full job search spreadsheet to ChatGPT. And I said, am I doing okay? This feels like it's going awful. And it said, actually, this looks like a good executive job search. You're getting far in processes, you're moving through the funnel. It just takes time. And so this is another prompt that I figure we can try and just see what it has to say. And one thing to note is the more you use these tools, the better it gets to know you, creepily so. And it starts being able to pinpoint the things that are your emotional hot buttons. And then it gets something that's a lot more useful for your personal needs and your personal mindset. So plateau point, I'm opinionated, apparently. That's fairly true. May is a hiring slowdown. That was something I kind of knew, but didn't remember actively. So getting reminded of that. Maybe I'm tired. Okay. You know, I had an interaction with Ha at Sidebar Summit where she probably was like, oh man, Rebecca is not in a good headspace. Better now, thank you. And so what do you do next? Maybe I need a break. I was actually Ha and ChatGPT agreed on that one. And so, I think that the key takeaway here is every stage in the process, there are things you can do to leverage ChatGPT in a way that will save you time, give you perspective, and ultimately help you show up more thoughtfully for these potential employers. And that's what we all need to do. We need to show up as if we have already been working at the company for 2 years and know exactly how to help them solve their problems. It's not the experience we bring, it's our ability to actually solve the problems that they have that's going to distinguish us from those other 20 candidates. So I do have a cheat sheet with a bunch of example prompts across the entire flow. I'm going to drop that in the chat, but now I'm going to hand it over to Ron here to show off a Replit project that he created that actually does some cool resume stuff to actually customize your resume, which I'm really looking forward to seeing. So let me stop sharing and you can go ahead and share.
And thank you,
All
Rebecca.
right.
That was incredible.
Yeah, thank you. Any summary or synthesis before we transition?
No, I actually love how Rebecca was so self-reflective there, because I was like, oh my gosh, Rebecca's in a bad headspace. And then look at you today. I was like, you were clear and poised with clarity and exec presence and great communication. And I think that that's what hiring managers are looking for when they're talking to someone on the other candidates on the other side. So good for you, Rebecca. Love it. Stay
Awesome.
positive.
Yeah.
And I hope you took that little small break for yourself. So.
Yeah, that was awesome. And I think, when some people ask, is it better to look for a job when you have a job or when you don't have a job? Because job searching can be a full-time job. I think the confidence that Rebecca talked about is really the thing, not about whether you have a job or you don't have a job. And more often, we just have more confidence when we do have a job. But regardless, I think that's what needs to get projected of the confidence of, if you hire me, I've got this. And I can take care of your problem. Anyway, so the genesis of this project was honestly not for something like a show and tell. It was just to solve my own problem. And then, of course, Ha elevated it. So it's not going to look pretty, but it is functional. And the problem I was trying to solve is it's obviously a tough job market. And I was getting a lot of requests from friends and former coworkers, et cetera, to review their resumes because they realized the importance of it, like Rebecca outlined. And I found I was giving very similar suggestions and advice to people. And, you can imagine this is iterative. So I would give feedback, they would send next version, et cetera. I'm like, oh, this is not the best use of anybody's time. And so I said this might be a good project for me to use technology for. And so at that point, the thing that I used was Replit. So I'll demo it and then I'll give you the link and then you can play with it as well. So that was the genesis, was to give people feedback more quickly. I think I went through 17 iterations. So this is that version. I certainly didn't start with this. And we can go from there. So are you able to see it just says resume review AI? Yeah,
Right
you're
now
able
it
to see
just
it?
says you've started screen sharing, but I don't see the actual screen.
Okay. Let's try that again. I don't know why it keeps saying it's paused. All right, let's see. Maybe I'll just share the whole screen. All right, are you able to see it now? All right. So as you can see in this example, there was no branding. As I said, this was a completely personal project, so it doesn't even have my name on it. But super simple. It was upload your resume as a PDF. That's what most people use. Most people are not using paste text. And then this was the job posting URL, which we talked about. So I'll show you a couple of variations. So this is for a health tech role. So this person's my sister-in-law. She's a registered nurse. And so this is giving her a resume score. And it gives her a relative, like for the industry benchmark across a bunch of different areas, how is she doing versus the benchmark? And more specifically, it gives her a prioritized list of suggestions of quantifying achievements. And as my wife's also in healthcare, and they tend to list their responsibilities versus impact of those responsibilities. And so that's what it's really trying to show will have the highest impact. And then there are a couple of others. So, and then of course they can iterate. So it allows them to iterate. It gives them the specificity and allows them to iterate. Now, here's an example of it pointed to a specific job. So just like what Rebecca highlighted, right? So you can say, give me feedback. I'm going to give you this specific job description and then upload the resume. So it's the same resume. So same score, but now it's also giving beyond the regular stuff that it talked about there. It's giving specific recommendations for this particular role. Now, with all the talk that we just did about how many of these job descriptions are actually being written by humans versus AI itself, etc., I don't know. But it doesn't hurt to make it more specific to the role. So Ha also asked me to talk about something that was surprising, and I thought this was funny, which is I'll put my own resume now, because having written the tool, you would think that I would have got 100. So this is why I had done a few of them right before we started, because it just takes a while to do it. And this PDF processing was actually the reason that I stayed with Replit. Lovable and Vercel were both struggling with the PDF processing. Oh, here we go. Apparently this one is too. Oh, this one is now a separate issue. Okay, so I will give you the score. So the score was 85, but the first time I uploaded a resume that I put in here, it was, I think it was 65, which was, in my opinion, shockingly low. So the reasons were all the reasons that I was telling people what to do, right? And I had not done it myself. So sometimes we can know all the things in our head, but when it comes to actually doing it ourselves, we need a reminder. And I certainly needed a reminder to do all the things that I was telling people to do. So use active voice, talk about impact and accomplishments versus listing responsibilities. I mean, it was just giving me a rehash of everything that I had said, which was a little bit embarrassing, but also useful because at least I didn't go out with that resume. There were a couple of other things that I wanted to share, especially that came up as Rebecca was chatting. So one is in the ChatGPT area, there's something called projects. I think with ChatGPT, that only shows up for pro accounts or paid accounts. But whether you use Gemini or whatever the others, they all have this concept of projects or spaces. And those are incredibly powerful. So as an example, I uploaded a ton of my stuff to a project. So I upload my resume, I uploaded my how I work document, I uploaded podcasts that I've done, writings that I've done. So that's all part of the asset base of one of my projects. And then I do the same thing that Rebecca said is, given what you know about me, assess this company and tell me the things that you think are great and things that I should be watchful for. So it just gives it, the more context you give it about you, the more useful some of the suggestions and things will be. Another way that I used it is I was doing a pitch for a project for a CEO at a tech company. And I used my project, so it had all the context about me. And then I gave it lots of links about the CEO and the company, etc. And I said, tell me what are likely to be his top 5 priorities and how I might position myself to be a solution to them. So very similar to what Rebecca was talking about. So when I actually did the call, I could show up on the call and say, hey, I've done these kind of things before. And my assessment is these are the kind of things that you are likely dealing with. And he was like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm dealing with. And the more that you can show that you understand their problems and then obviously show how you have solved those challenges in the past, the more affinity you build. So after that session, he said, you're just the first person I'm meeting. I'm like, great. If you want to meet other people, I'm happy to introduce you to them. But at the end of the session, he's like, no, I just feel like you could figure this out and you could be the solution that we have. So let's just move forward. And that was even a better outcome than I was hoping for. But it goes back to Rebecca's point of being able to be confident and feel confident and demonstrate that confidence of, I understand your problems and I've done this before and can help you solve this challenge. All right, so that is apparently I need to re-up my Anthropic balance for this link to work for people, which I will do shortly. That's a wonderful problem to have, which is people actually using something that I've built. So thrilled to do that, but I'll hand it back to you for Q&A. And Rebecca, if there's anything else that you cut out to give me space, feel free to share.
So why don't we start off with the Q&A, and then if there's relevant things that I skipped, then I can pull them in and show them off.
Okay, so I'm always a big fan of folks coming on camera and off mute to ask questions rather than typing in the chat. But if you're really shy, or you're in your pajamas, feel free to type into the chat too.
Or show off your pajamas if they're interested in pajamas.
Just one comment or question. I think this might be of help because I faced this recently. I used Perplex. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I used Perplexity Pro to research a company that had approached me and gave me sources, attributions, everything. But because it's a private company, of course, revenues are not the same of what it claims. So be aware when you do talk to recruiters, when you do talk to ask them for the revenue of the startup. Don't go blindly by what ChatGPT or Perplexity Pro is giving me. This is just a tip because the scale was so different. It was so off, the revenue numbers. So just a FYI.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think in this case, that sort of applying a little bit of judgment once you get the answer helps a huge amount, because if it's a private company, odds are good that there isn't publicly available information about the revenue unless it's a heavily, discussed company. So this is where, okay, this may be a hallucination I should verify versus, okay, it's logical that ChatGPT or Perplexity is going to know the answer to this question.
Yeah.
What did we miss? Other tips that other folks have experienced?
One question to you as well as Run there is like, as you get different companies approaching you, have you modified your resume according to what the job description is? And how do you then take it to either project spaces or this one? How do you keep track of that?
So Randir is going to he's going to figure out where I live and send a bow and arrow my way. But I actually have stopped customizing my resume when I already have a connection with the company. And I think that's the critical thing. At that point, they've probably looked at my LinkedIn profile, which in some ways is more complete than my resume. And so the resume is almost a tick in the box. There is also the fact that I am looking at a pretty narrow set of opportunities. The resume is going to be pretty accurate for the vast majority of those. If there's something that has gone far afield, then I may take another look and customize it again. Or if I get tips from the recruiter on things that I should emphasize more.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I don't customize the resume per company, but I certainly customize it for the category. So to Rebecca's point, there's one that is very focused on product roles, but I'm also trying to branch out and do things that are broader than product. So president, COO, GM type of roles. So I have a different resume for that profile, which also makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And Alan, yes, so I had my sidebar call just before this session, and one of the other things that people were talking about was what are good interview tools. And definitely, I was one of the early beta testers for the sidebar interview tool. It's solid. It's really good. I will note, I actually did a practice case study just doing audio via ChatGPT. It gave me really good feedback also, but I think that the Sidebar interview tool is way more purpose-built for this sort of thing.
Yeah, any practice is key. And of course, if you can get to the awesome stuff like Sidebar ones, totally do it. But this is high stakes. And we all know how hard it is to get to that interview stage. So when you show up there, it's got to be game on. And that can't be your first time thinking of stories and how to say it in a star format or whatever. And I say this having practiced with Mercor repeatedly, and they show you the leaderboard. Unfortunately, they don't show you the responses that generated that score. But my first few are not even on the leaderboard. Like, it's that bad. So it requires, we all get rusty, and there's no point sitting on ego. I need practice, and I better know that ahead of time.
Other questions? Or like I said, things that you think we missed, things that you were like, oh, I was expecting to hear somebody talk about this because this is this amazing idea that I've used so many times, and why didn't they bring it up?
Hi, how are you guys? It's Myra. It's really great to see familiar faces on this call. I did jump on about 10 minutes late, so maybe you did cover this, but I'm curious if you had any tips about just collecting or gathering more information about companies. I know, we've talked about making relationships with executive recruiters, things like that. I have also found that like when I've been able to do searches and actually identify companies just by doing my own research of what I'm interested in, and have reached out to them, that has been helpful and successful because nobody really knows who they are, but there's a very nice, perfect alignment. Um, yeah, curious if you guys have any tips about how to just do that, but in a more accelerated, automated manner.
So let me try restating. So what you're saying is, I'm looking for companies that match a certain type of profile of what I'm interested in, and there's thousands and thousands of companies out there. How do I find them when they're flying below the radar? So the pattern matching there, I've actually found some really useful interactions with ChatGPT. If I say, here's the profile of the company I'm looking for. So in my case, my ideal profile is 100 million to 1 billion in revenue. 1,000 to 5,000 employees ish, late stage or early public, B2B SaaS, solving a problem, not building AI models. So like using AI, cool. Building AI models, that's not for me. That, is either located in the Bay Area or does remote. What companies have I not thought of that fall into this category? It's ginned up some pretty good long lists. And the more you refine, you say, okay, of this list, here are the 8 that look really interesting. What other companies are like that? And you just keep on iterating. It's going to generate some really useful information there. I don't know where it's getting it from, but at a certain, like, sometimes it'll give me citations and it'll be something like, a top startups list, or, funding from TechCrunch or that kind of thing.
Kim.
Here's a thought. So last year I was starting to work with a group around never search alone. For healthcare reasons, I had to sideline it because I had to deal with some stuff. But what's interesting, you do your 2-pager Manuka, if you know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
It sounds like we can use that as a prompt,
Yeah.
building upon what you're doing. So being able to do that and find companies, because a lot of, they teach never search alone is metrics. It's just throughput, but being very efficient about targeting who you want and be able to turn around. I view these tools that we're talking about here, or approaches, as kind of like, maybe we should start with a Manukan and then kind of build from there. I know they take it from a certain perspective, like you should do informational interviews and feedback. I think that's also important, but it's almost like we can, once you refine what you're looking for, or what you seem to be in the marketplace, that would be kind of interesting to see if we can plug
Yeah.
that in.
And for anyone who hasn't explored the Never Search Alone process, one, highly recommend the book and potentially Job Search Councils, but also Manukin is basically, it's a 2-pager that describes what is an absolute must for you in terms of what you're looking for, what is an absolute no. And so it gives you this, like I was saying, that narrowed approach, I think, is really helpful, and the NSA process absolutely gets you there. And yeah, I think it would be great to just paste that in or upload that doc and say, help me find companies that match this. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, Kim, that would be an awesome addition to put into that project. So along with
Mhm.
your resume,
Yeah.
your work style, etc., this would be a perfect thing to drop in there. Hey, I'll just share now that I've got my credits back. Let me just share. So this is, I uploaded my resume, and you can see the score here, and you can see where it's stronger than average and where it's
Ran,
just
So
about
Randhir,
average.
you're still not sharing, or at least I'm
Oh
not
my
seeing
yeah,
it.
we
gosh,
can't see it.
sorry. I don't
Yeah.
know what is going on. Rebecca and I tested all the stuff and it worked fine. Okay, hopefully now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. All right, so you can say this is the score I mentioned, the 85 out of 100. You can see on certain things it's spiking, which is a good thing, but on certain things it's not. So here, so first of all, when it's giving me scores in the 5 points, then I've hit a lot of the big ones, which I told you I was at 65 earlier. So you can see I've made some progress. This one, what is the impact? So quantifying the impact of implementing the tools. These were, I couldn't quantify them yet because they are just being released. So that was an intentional omission, but it's picking that up. Obviously, it doesn't have that context. Specific metrics around improvements. So yeah, this is a good one. So anyway, you can see it's on this hunt of trying to quantify and demonstrate impact that would help get this to closer to 100. Right. So anyway, just wanted you to see that in flight.
Cool.
I
Awesome.
have a question that you may have already covered in the first few minutes. I also had to arrive a bit late. I'm sorry. One is there a service that will look at your mannerisms around executive presentation and communication and sort of spot the number of times you say And again, I apologize if you just covered this. But I would love to sort of put myself on record and watch the analysis, because I have a feeling I do all kinds of things in my communication that I'm not aware of. Is anyone tracking something like that?
So Jason Jackson, who's in Sidebar, mentioned something. Let me see if I can message him and if he'll get back to me in time, because there is a service he uses for this. But if anyone else knows of something, then please.
Yeah. So I used this one and I was an advisor to them till they got sold to DeepGram. I put it in the chat. It's called Poised. And it was mind blowing to me. It would tell me how many times I said and I'm like, there's no way I said that many times. And then you can click on it and it shows you all the times you said it, which was very embarrassing. I have a tendency to speak quickly, and so it would show me what's the target words per minute,
Me too.
and then where I was, which was again way more than I should be. So it made me very cognizant of things, and it provides a lot of this feedback in real time, which is both a curse and a blessing. So treat it. I mean, it's a very powerful tool. I was a huge fan of it.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And if Jason Jackson has any feedback, Rebecca, I would love to hear it as well. But that's
He's typing
exactly
now, so hopefully soon.
cool. The other quick sort of side of that was there's this under discussed element of interviews over Zoom, and that is people's backgrounds, their camera quality, and lighting. And one thing that I've noticed is mine, no matter what I do, it sort of sucks. And I feel like I'm constantly on meetings, at least for work, with this crisp, wonderfully colored people. And then somehow I'm the sort of cast and the sort of, maybe not so much right now because there's light coming in through the window, but I would love if there was a service that would sort of assess essentially your presentation in the same way that you would wear a nice sort of bit of clothes to an interview.
So
Really?
an old boss of mine spent thousands of dollars creating the perfect setup. I don't think we need to do that, but here's the few key things I took away. Lighting is your number one thing. I have 2 lights coming in from above on either side of my monitor. And you can decide for yourself whether you think my lighting is good, but I think it's pretty solid. I keep it a little
Right.
dim so that I don't get blinded. High quality mic. I have a Yeti Blue. That's sort of the gold standard. It's not cheap, but it's great. And then I use a speaker bar that's clipped to the bottom of my screen. And then just any solid camera. Don't use your built-in camera. Use something that is separate, that has a little bit higher resolution. I would say those are the key points. Background, I feel matters a little less, but that's just me. As long as it doesn't have, random, dogs jumping around and, eating their dinner in the background or something. Actually, I love dogs jumping around, but that's just me.
What makes it non-trivial for me is that I have this Logitech camera, but the wash from the screen is actually bigger than I have a ring light as well. But the wash from the screen actually has this huge impact. So what windows I have on the screen will sort of affect my face in a way.
Right.
So, oh, this is great. Thanks. Yeah, avoid background.
And so there had been a question earlier from Arvita about improving top of funnel and outreach. So that's actually less something I think that you can truly you can't use ChatGPT for per se. But here are the things that I've found that have helped my inbound. Posting on LinkedIn, don't overthink it. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just be active, comment on other people's posts, repost things that you find interesting. Instead of reading it and going, oh, that's interesting, repost or comment or like. Turn off your open to work setting once a month and then turn it right back on again. It helps in the algorithm. Makes no sense, I know, but it does. So I've found that those sorts of things do generate a higher level of inbound. And just make sure that you have structured your LinkedIn profile such that it talks about the kinds of jobs that you want. Elena Krasnoporova did a LinkedIn revision session in a 747 at the Sidebar Summit. And so I think she's doing that. I think she may be doing that also virtually at some point soon. So definitely recommend dialing into that, because it's all around curating your presence online. And honestly, at this point, your presence online and your presence on LinkedIn professionally are more or less one and the same, unless you have a massive following on some other platform like Substack. So the Sidebar Summit was actually at the Hiller Aviation Museum, and there is half of a 747 as a display. And so some of the sessions were literally in the passenger section of a 747.
I went for that session, candidly, primarily to be in a 747 doing a workshop. I mean, where the heck are you going to get that kind of experience? But the session was great too.
Yes, agreed.
All right, let's take more questions. But before we do, Rebecca, do you want to pop up the QR code, or would you like me?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Let's
One
do that
second.
before
And
people start disappearing, because the feedback is super valuable to us. And I share it with Rebecca and Randir. I know they would greatly appreciate any feedback on the session. So take out your phone, there'll be a QR code, or if you're on your desktop, you can type in the bit.ly onto the desktop. And just take a few minutes. We'll hold the screen here. We'll just take a few minutes to share some feedback, and then we'll continue to take questions.
Yeah, and so Jason did get back to me. He uses Udly also. So whoever said Udly, that's great minds think alike.
Yep, that's a solid one.
All right. Other thoughts or questions?
Yeah, it would actually be great as we're starting to experiment with these things. Maybe a feedback session later on, like, what did we find worked? because we're all going to be experimenting with this. So that would be helpful.
Yeah,
Yep.
take notes. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, and I think I think getting together in person is valuable, but also challenging. But what we could also do is to just start a sidebar. What are those things called? Like the chat groups, topic-based chat groups,
Mm.
and invite all the people who came here, and
Yeah.
that way we can continue the conversation asynchronously as
there's-
well.
Well, there's already a thread
Oh,
on this event series, so we can continue the conversation there. Of course, we have the affinity groups, and I think we even recently broke out the AI one into a few different ones. And then I love these sessions. I like learn by seeing and doing and talking to other people. So we should just continue to do more of these sessions too.
Yeah.
A lot of these sessions have been member led, so don't be shy to raise your hand and we'll like have you demo the next AI tool that is changing your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, there it is. That's yes, that hair just in front of Elena, that's me. I was sitting in the front row. So I see Latha has her hand raised.
Yeah, just wanted to say thank you, Rebecca and Randhir. And I think some of the questions are awesome. The prompts, I'll take that away. But I also wanted to offer this tip to others. One thing in the Sidebar Summit, there was Ian O'Toole from Riviera Partners who did the recruiter presentation. That was really, really good. And if we can have him back to Sidebar to do a virtual presentation, that would be great. What I offer as a tip from there is in all the prompts that you're doing, that Randhir also talked about space or project, you could ask ChatGPT or whatever to say, hey, what is my 2-minute or what is a 2-sentence recruiter pitch? What is a impact statement? What is a value stabilizer that I bring? I think that's been also very helpful to have those 3 in your hand, tip of the fingers to offer to anyone that you're talking to, like an elevator pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, one of the bits that I skipped is I have a standard elevator pitch and I asked it to help me customize it for this particular job. So that was one of the bits that I skipped in the interest of time, but agree 100%, especially if you get one that's more generic, figuring out how to target it depending on who you're talking to is like, we can get so wrapped around the axle trying to figure that out on our own.
Yeah.
Just having an AI thought partner on that is really helpful.
and just adding to that point, I think one of the questions that I had spent very little time on, but is super impactful, is tell me about yourself. I don't know why that question just triggers me negatively, but I'm like, you have my resume. Like, this is such a stupid question to be asking in an interview, but I just learned to roll with it. And, it's not my call. I have to use that question and that opportunity to showcase my skills. And I'll post a link to the podcast that helped me really rethink my approach to that question. And then I practiced it with voice mode numerous times, because if you can nail that question, it makes the rest of the interview go so much better. So really encourage thinking about that question and practicing.
Yeah, and so I was lucky enough to get into a deep conversation with Evan about that very topic after the summit. We monopolized each other for, I think, a full half hour. A couple of points that he made that I found really interesting. One, they have your resume. You don't need to tell them about what you've accomplished. Tell them about what makes you special and different. And so it's about like something about how you think or something about why you love a particular thing. Like for me, I love transformation. That is who I am. I love digging in and understanding the dynamics of a company and figuring out what needs to change in order to help the company build better product. That is who I am. I'm not a 0 to 1 person, but that is my sweet spot. And so figuring out a way to express that rather than talking about, okay, yes, I helped a company go from 80 million to 100 million in less than a year. I, drove high scale, et cetera. Yes, those are useful, but they aren't as memorable. And it's the memorable bit that is really critical. follow Evan on LinkedIn if you haven't. He's really like, I have a little bit of hero worship going with him
He's
now.
also doing another session, a repeat
Yeah.
session virtually June. So
Sign up.
for it.
Sign up.
He's good, yeah. But it essentially boils down to storytelling, right? And that's
Yeah.
classic.
Absolutely. All right. Any other
Stop the screen share now. Hopefully everybody got it.
Okay. Hopefully, yeah. Now I get to see everyone's smiling faces again. Cool. Well, if anyone doesn't have there, if people don't have any more questions, we can give people back a few minutes. Thank you very much, everybody, for
By the
joining.
way, I'm loving the idea of maybe a subset of this group starting a job search council with each other. But
Yeah, plus one to
Yeah,
learn.
we can totally explore that.
yeah.
So in the chat, as you guys come up with other prompts that you find really helpful, share them. So not just, I sent out that link of mine, but I don't have a monopoly on this by any stretch of the imagination. I would love to hear about other ideas of ways that you've leveraged this massive unstructured information out there in a way that saves you hours and hours of time and makes you come across as a genius. That's kind of really what it boils down to for me. So yeah, share in the thread. I'd love to hear about it. Cool. All right.
Great.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the day. Have a good weekend.
Yeah. Thanks for showing up and thanks for sharing your own tips.
Yeah.
Great
All
session.
the
Thanks,
best.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
See you next time.